In the beginning of the parsha, after the pasuk Vayasev Elikim es ha'am, that Hashem took the Yidden a roundabout way through the midbar towards the Yamsuf, Vachamushim, all bnei Yisrael, the Yidden went up armed from the land of Mitzrayim. The pasuk says, Vayikach Moshe es atzmos Yosef imoy, Moshe Rabbeinu takes the bones of Yosef, Ki hashbeya hishbiya, because Yosef had made them swear that they would take up his bones with them out of Mitzrayim. The Kli Yakar discusses these two psukim, how they come right next to each other. What is the connection between the pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu takes the bones of Yosef to the previous pasuk, Vachamushim olu bnei Yisrael, that the Yidden went up armed? And the Kli Yakar explains, he gives two explanations. The first explanation he gives is based on what it says in the Medrash, in the Yalkut on this parsha, that in the Midbar, the two Aroinos, the Aroin of the Shechina with the Luchos and the Aroin of Yosef would travel next to each other. The Gemara brings this as well, as the Rebbe points out in the footnote. And the nations would ask, what are these two Aroinos doing together? And they would respond that Yosef, who's in one Aroin, fulfilled everything that says in the other Aroin, the Aseres HaDibros, that are on the Luchos of what's called the Aroin of the Shechina. Says the Kli Yakar, based on this, we can now understand how these two psukim go together. Because first, the pasuk says, "Vachamushim olu bnei Yisrael," the Yidden went up armed. What is their arms? How are they armed? They're specifically armed with this holy Aroin. That usually they're armed with the holy Aroin that would go with them. So the next pasuk comes along and says that Moshe Rabbeinu took the bones of Yosef with him to explain what would be the arms before Matan Torah, before they had the Aroin HaKodesh. So the pasuk is saying this was the Aroin of Yosef, because the Aroin of Yosef is as similar to having the Luchos, as if it's in him is engraved all the Aseres HaDibros. This is the Kli Yakar's first explanation. Kli Yakar then gives a second explanation, that the pasuk of Vayikach Moshe atzmos Yosef is actually coming in continuation to the beginning of the pasuk, where it says Vayasev Elikim, that Hashem made them go in a roundabout way, derech hamidbar, through the midbar towards the Yamsuf. Moshe thought that it might be the Yam might get in the way, the Yamsuf might get in the way. So Moshe thought that then in the schus of Yosef, the sea would split. As the Razal actually learned from the pasuk, Hayom Ro'o Vayonos. So the Razal say, what did the sea? What did it see and run away and flee? It saw the bones of Yosef. So these are the Kli Yakar's two explanations. But the Rebbe says we need to have explanation, clarification in regards to both of these pirushim, especially al derech hapshat. Because number one, in the previous psukim, it doesn't mention anything at all that the Yidden would travel in the midbar with the Aroin of the Shechina, and that therefore we would understand that the Aroin of Yosef is now instead of the Aroin of the Shechina, the holy Aroin. And regarding the second thing as well, it's not mentioned anywhere, neither in the psukim before or in the psukim after, that Kriyas Yamsuf was in the schus of Yosef. Says the Rebbe, from all of this we understand, from the fact that these two psukim do go together, we understand that even though, yes, it's true, taking the bones of Yosef was mainly something connected to Yetzias Mitzrayim, like Yosef made them promise that Hashem is going to remember you and you'll take my bones out. Nevertheless, it's also connected with the fact that Hashem is now going to be taking them through the midbar, specifically walking through the midbar. And that's why they need to take the bones of Yosef with them. And this is, as the Rebbe, is what we need to understand. What is the connection between these two things? We also need to understand, since we know that Torah is nitzchis, Torah is eternal, it's a hayra, a lesson to every single Yid in all times and all places. So it's understood that also this idea that Moshe takes the bones of Yosef with him as we're going through the midbar and leaving Mitzrayim is also an eternal hayra. And to point out, says the Rebbe, another detail, that yes, even a one-time thing that happened, that Moshe Rabbeinu takes the bones with Yosef, of Yosef going out of Mitzrayim, is also an absolute eternal thing. In other words, yes, we are going to have now an eternal thing from that one time that Moshe did this act. Says the Rebbe, we're going to understand this by first prefacing what the expression in the pasuk, Vayikach Moshe atzmos Yosef imoy, that he took the bones of Yosef. Now, seemingly, yes, it's true that Yosef, when he made them promise, he uses this expression regarding himself. As he says in the end of that pasuk, you'll take my bones with you. Nevertheless, that's one thing for Yosef to say it, but it seems to be not a very respectful way, speaking about tzaddikim, about the bones of Yosef. So Torah seemingly should have not used the expression atzmos Yosef, but rather something like Vayikach Moshe es Aron Yosef, or just Yosef. He took the Aron of Yosef with him. Especially according to the first Pirush of Kli Yakar, that was the point. There's the Aron. There's the Aron of the Luchos and the Aron with Yosef, or a similar sort of expression. So why this expression of the bones? Says the Rebbe, in fact, this is what the Pasuk really wants to emphasize. That when they left Mitzrayim, Moshe took Atzmos Yosef. What is the idea of Atzmos Yosef? Because the reason why Atzmos are called by that name, the bones are called by that name, because the word atzamos, in addition to just meaning bones, is also from the word of etzem, the very essence and the strength of the person. The person's body, the main essence or the whole structure, the strength of the body is in his bones, and so too with animals. So in other words, atzmos Yosef really represents the essence of Yosef, the very essence of Yosef. And taking the essence of Yosef was so important because Hashem is going to be taking them through the Midbar, as we will soon see how that all works together. What is the idea of the essence of Yosef? What are we talking about when we say the essence of Yosef? So it's actually expressed in his name. When his mother calls him by the name Yosef, when Rachel calls him Yosef, Atikra Shema Yosef, she calls him Yosef, Lamer saying, she says, why is his name Yosef? Yosef Hashem li, Hashem should add to me Ben Acher, which simply means to have another son. Hashem should add another son. In other words, what's the idea of Yosef? That another child should come about. But even that's still not the very essence of Yosef, because then it could have just said, Yosef li Hashem, Ben Hashem should give me another son. But it says, what is Yosef? Lamer, it's saying, Yosef Hashem li Ben Acher. So what does Ben Acher mean? Not only just plain Ben, but Ben Acher. The idea being is that we take from an Acher, from someone that is foreign, someone that's estranged, and make him and reveal inside of him how he's really a child of the Eibishter. In other words, take from a Yid that's an Acher, who's acting different, foreign to Yiddishkeit, Rahman al-Itzlan completely being an Acher, as if he's someone else completely. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, what is Sitra Achra? The side that's not Kedusha, that's the Acher. And to make out of him a child that can be visible, seen in him, that he's a child of the Eibishter, Banim Atem LaHashem Elokeichem. That's what Ben Acher means. The Tzemach Tzedek explains, based on this, one of the something that the Medrash says. The Medrash has various different pirushim on these words. Yosef Hashem li Ben Acher. So the Medrash says, one of the pirushim is that Acher refers to someone that acts in a way of Acher, different and foreign to the Eibishter, like Yeravam v'Chaveirov, who come out of Yosef. And seemingly it's very strange. Is Rachel davening over here that she should have a child that's going to be doing the act of Acherim, that's going to be acting in a foreign way, like Yeravam and his friends? So this is what the Tzemach Tzedek says. That's what the Yosef Hashem li Ben Acher means, exactly the opposite. We're taking someone that's acting different and foreign, and to make him into a ben to his Father in heaven, to Hashkadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Rebbe, and this was something very crucial as the Yidden go out of Mitzrayim and as a preparation to going out of Mitzrayim. Because what happened by Yetzias Mitzrayim, that's the time that it was revealed in the whole world, the fulfillment in an open and clear way, the promise that Hashem said, Shalach es b'ni, send out my child, the Yidden. The Yidden are children to the Eibishter. And therefore, as this is being fulfilled, and it's about to be fulfilled, we know that Hashem acts midah keneged midah, measure for measure. So when the Yidden are leaving Mitzrayim, the Yidden also need to be acting in this way. Through Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the Roya Yisrael, the shepherd of the Yidden, taking them out of Mitzrayim. that they take along with them the essence of Yosef, Atzmos Yosef. In other words, taking along with them this attitude that every Yid needs to ensure that there will be another child for Hashem. And he has to make sure that this is happening even to someone that up until now was an Acher, someone that was foreign, someone that was distant. Says that based on this, we could also understand the connection to the end of the parsha. We know the concept of notes, tchilos and besoifon. The beginning is wedged or connected to the end. So what we spoke till now is the beginning of the parsha. What do we have at the end of the parsha? The Torah tells the story how Amalek comes and fights the Yidden in Refidim. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Yeshua, B'char lanu anoshim, choose men for us to go fight Amalek. In other words, that the war had to be led through Yeshua specifically. In Medrashim, in fact, it says, why is Yeshua the one that needed to lead this war with Amalek, and not Moshe directly? Because Yeshua comes from Yosef. We have a pasuk, Vayabes Yaakov Eish, the house of Yaakov, the household of Yaakov is compared to fire. The household of Yosef is compared to lahava, to a flame, to a blaze. Obeis Esav, and Esav is compared to kash, to the straw, the fire that destroys the straw. Amalek comes from Esav, so it was specifically Yeshua that came from Yosef that needed to go and fight Amalek. The Rebbe explains, how is it even possible that Amalek was able to come and fight with the Yidden? It was only because amongst the Yidden, there were those that had Sfeikus and Amunah, doubts in Hashem. As the pasuk says, Hayesh Havaya B'kirbeinu Yamayim, questioning whether Hashem is really amongst us or not. Which Yidden is Amalek able to impact, able to touch, able to start up with? So we have a pasuk, this is another place in Torah, in Parshas Kiseitzu, where it discusses this war of Amalek. Those that were nechashalim acharecha, the stragglers behind you. Again, acharecha, that emphasizes it over here, in I guess the words that it's similar to the word acher. Rashi explains over there, who is nechashalim acharecha? Those people that were weak because of the sins, and the cloud had expelled them. In other words, only those that are acharecha, behind you, outside the cloud, those are the ones that Amalek could start up with. The Yidden that are inside the cloud, Amalek can't touch at all, can't impact at all. So comes along Amalek through the Yetzer Hara. In other words, this doubt could come up to the people that want to go outside and fight the war. Amalek through the Yetzer Hara gives these ideas into the people's minds and says, since Amalek is only fighting those that are weak because of their sins, Amalek is not fighting those that are in the cloud. So why is there a necessity that those Yidden that are Yirei Chet, the God-fearing Yidden, those that are fierce, why should they leave the cloud? As Rashi actually says on the pasuk, "V'tzei min ha'anon," "Tzei hilochim ha'amalek," to go out and fight Amalek. Rashi says it means go out of the cloud. Seemingly, out of the cloud is a place that's dangerous, both physically and spiritually. And what's it for? Just to save these Yidden that the cloud had spat out? In other words, those Yidden that are the sinners? Therefore, as an introduction to all of this, to all of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and to the Melchemes Amalek, Moshe Rabbeinu takes as Atzmos Yosef, the bones of Yosef, which we explain meaning the essence of Yosef, the attitude of Yosef. And therefore, when a state like this comes up, where a Yid, you have a situation where a Yid is an Acher, he's foreign, he's estranged to Avinu Shabashamayim. He's asking, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu, is Hashem amongst us? And as the mashal that Rashi brings, of a person that had his son riding on his shoulder, and is traveling on the road, they encounter another person, and the child who's on the father's shoulder says to this other person, did you see my father? And then the father says, you don't know where I am? And he gets him into trouble. In other words, we're speaking about a person that's not acknowledging his father, Rachmana litzlan, and he's acting like an acher, he's acting completely estranged. So this is when it's demanded, what's needed of those Yidden that are the Giborim, the strong ones, the Yirei Chet, that they need to go out of the cloud. They need to go save those Yidden and bring them back into the cloud, so that he should be able to see his father, see Avinu Shabashamayim, and see how Hashem takes care of each and every Yid as a child. As the Eibishter says, Tamid ani beinechem, I'm always amongst you, and prepared and ready for and giving you all of your needs. And therefore we need to see to make out of each one of these people, also, it should be recognizable in them, that they should also feel that they are a child to Hashem. Says the Rebbe, so this is the whole point and the kavanah. the reason why the Milchama had to be through Yeshua. On the one hand, of course, the Milchama is being led through Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's B'shlichus Shel Moshe. It's going as agents of Moshe. These are Anshe Moshe, the people of Moshe. But at the same time, Moshe Rabbeinu says to Yeshua, B'char lanu anoshim, choose for us men to have this war to go save the Yidden that are weak in their emunah, those that are weak because of their Averis, as we quoted before. That has to happen through Yeshua, who's a descendant of Yosef. Because I said before, this is the avodah of Yosef. Yosef Hashem li ben acher, to make out of that one who's an acher, to make him into a ben. And he goes with the koyach of Yosef, which Moshe Rabbeinu himself is taking along as they go out of Mitzrayim. Says the Rebbe, according to this we can also understand, going back to the original point, the psukim, how they come next to each other, that the pasuk of Vayikach Moshe Atzmus Yosef Imoy comes immediately after the pasuk that Hashem took the Yidden through the Midbar, towards the Yamsuf. This idea of taking the bones of Yosef along with him is relevant specifically because they're going into the Midbar. If the Yidden would go directly into Eretz Yisrael, and then it would also be a Geula Shleima, they wouldn't need, for their avodah, for themselves, they wouldn't need so much the Atzmos Yosef. As the Rebbe points out in the footnote, yes, they would need it to fulfill Yosef's promise, but it wouldn't be for their survival. But since Hashem is taking them through the Midbar, the Yidden are going from Mitzrayim into a Midbar, which the Pasuk describes as a Midbar HaGadol, a great, frightening Midbar of Nachash, snakes and scorpions, and thirst with no water, etc. It's a place that's dangerous physically because it's spiritually a dangerous place. The Pasuk describes a Midbar as a place of Lo Yoshav Adam Sham. It's a place that's not inhabited by people. And that refers to both Adam in the sense of Yidden. It's not a place for a Yid, it's a place that Yidden are called Adam, Atam Kriyim Adam. So the Midbar is not a place for an Adam, for a Yid. It's also not a place Kavayachal for Hashem, the Adam Elyon. Pasuk says regarding Hashem, Val Dmus Hakise Dmus Kemari Adam Olav Umayos. Hashem is referred to as an Adam. So the place of a Midbar is not a place for spirituality. So it could happen that a Yid there may not be able to overcome the Nisyonis, the challenges that might be there. And he's unfortunately in the state of an acher, of a foreigner, Rahman al-Itzlan. And as in fact did happen with all the different nisyonos and fights and quarrels that the Yidden had being in the Midbar. Therefore they had to take the Atzmos Yosef, this avoided the Nesinas Koyach, this empowerment of Yosef Hashem li ben acher, to take from a state of an acher to be ready to make him into a ben, even these people that unfortunately are having difficulties, to make them also into a child to our Father in heaven. Says the Rebbe, this is also a Irah that we take for all times and places, from Vayikach Moshe's Atzmos Yosef Imoy. The Yidden going through the Golus is, as it's understood simply and also explained in Sfarim, it's also considered like going through the Midbar of the nations. So we have this eternal Irah that as we're in Golus, we have to take along Atzmos Yosef. We have to take along the Avodah of Yosef to make out of the Acher, to make out of these that are seemingly foreigners, that they should become once again a child L'Avinu Shabashamayim. And this is also the connection to the end of the previous pasuk, V'chamushim olu b'nei Yisrael mi'eretz Mitzrayim. Now we translated V'chamushim earlier, they were armed. But one of the pirushim on V'chamushim, which Rashi also brings, is that sadly, V'chamushim means only 1 out of every 5 Yidden left Mitzrayim. Whereas the other 4 out of every 5 died in the 3 days of darkness. So at Mitzrayim, not all Yidden left. This is why the Torah continues. Vayikach Moshe's Atzmos Yosef Imoy. Since we're taking the Atzmos Yosef for the duration of the whole time afterwards, including the time of Golus, that we're going to focus on making out of every single Yid, even someone that's an Acher, making him into a Ben L'Avinu Shabashamayim. So every single Yid will ultimately be taken out of Golus. The Rebbe says, we discussed many times the explanation on what Razal say regarding what we say to the Ben Rasha. In the Haggadah it says that we say to the Ben Rasha, Ilu hayasham, if he was there, he wouldn't have been redeemed. Says the Rebbe, what's the pshat? What we're telling him is only over there in Mitzrayim you wouldn't have been redeemed. But in the Geula of this current Galus, even he will be redeemed. We have the clear pasuk and the promise of the pasuk. Yidach mimenu nidach. No Yid will ever be pushed away completely. And this is also brought as a psak din in halacha. And this itself, when the Yid knows this itself arouses him to return to Hashem in His Torah, and that he should become a child, and not only any child, but like a chacham. Because we said before, he started off with tell us to the Rasha, but now he's turning into a Chacham. He should become a Ben Chacham La'aviv Shabashamayim. So up until here, the Rebbe was explaining directly the Parsha itself. The Rebbe now turns to another aspect related to all of this. And the Rebbe says, Parsha Beshalach we always read in Chodesh Shvat. Chodesh Shvat is specifically connected to Yosef and to the Avodah of Yosef. It's known, says the Rebbe, that the 12 months of the year correspond to the 12 Shvatim. And the Shvatim, according to the order of birth. So in other words, Yosef, who's the 11th child, is Chodesh Shvat, the 11th month when we count from Nisan. The connection between Shvat and Yosef, says the Rebbe, we're going to understand by first prefacing something that's brought in Kabbalah. That the 12 months of the year, each one of them also has a different siruf, a different combination of the Shem Havaya. That means Yud Kei Vav Kei could be reconfigured with different combinations. Which letter comes first, second, third, and fourth? So every single one of the 12 months has a different siruf of Shem Havaya that's shining, a different aspect, a different way our Shem Havaya is shining in that month. And this siruf of Shem Havaya is also always connected to some sort of pasuk. So the tziruf, the combination of Shem Havaya that shines in Chodesh Shvat, says in Sfarim, in Kabbalah, is the tziruf of, within Yud Kei Vav Kei, so you have first the Hey, then a Yud, then a Vav, and then the last Hey. Comes out of the pasuk in the end of Parshas B'chukoisai, where the pasuk says, Homer Yimirenu V'hayahu. So the Rosh Tevis of these four words, Homer Yimirenu V'hayahu, is Hey, Yud, and then another Vav and a Hey. So that's the special Rosh Tevis of Havaya connected to Chodesh Shvat. Now, before going into the continuation of the Sicha, just to clarify very briefly, what's the context of the pasuk, because it's going to be needed and relevant to the rest of the Sicha. The context of the pasuk over there is speaking about a concept called Tumura, which is that when you have a certain animal that was designated as a carbon, so you're not allowed to now swap, exchange, substitute this animal for another one. In other words, you can't come over to another animal that's not holy and say that this will be instead of that carbon. And if you do, this is what the pasuk is saying. And if you do substitute it, then both of them will be holy. Both the one that was the original carbon and the one you substituted it for. So they're both going to be holy. So now going back to the Sicha. So the Rebbe says, seemingly we need clarification. We know that everything in Torah is absolutely precise and accurate. So we must say that these words, Homer Yimirenu V'hayahu, which is the tziruf, the combination of Shem Havaya as it's in Chodesh Shvat. So it's not just a Rosh Tevis of four words, but somehow it's also connected to the content and the context of the pasuk. So the question is, in the pasuk it first says, V'lo yimirenu. You're not supposed to substitute one animal for another. It's a law from the Torah. It's a loisasa. It's a prohibition. In fact, if someone does this idea called Tumura, he gets malchus. It's only that the pasuk says, V'im. If you do substitute it, then then they're both going to be holy. And yet here we're saying that the combination of Shem Havaya, of Chodesh Shvat, is from these few words by itself. It almost sounds like it's a positive thing. You should go ahead and substitute. And then and then it will be holy, etc. It almost sounds like it's a command. Whereas the simple pshat of the pasuk is actually exactly the opposite. You're not allowed to exchange these animals. V'lo yimirenu. Says the Rebbe, we can explain it based on everything we said before. Beruchnius and avoid the ruchnius, in spiritual avoid, what's the idea of tumura? What's the idea of exchanging one thing for another? We're taking something that's a dover choy, like in this case, we had an animal that was not holy, and we want to exchange it. We want to make the holy animal a carbon. So in avodah, this is the idea, again, taking of something mundane, making it holy, which is exactly the same avodah that we spoke about before. Yosef Hashem li ben acher, to take from an acher, to take from someone that was foreign, that was far, and make him into a child of Hashem. Now, in this avodah of making from an acher into a ben, there is a certain yerida, a certain descent. You're going to have to get involved now with the mundane. A yid is going to have to go out of his safe zone, so to speak. The place where he was, like in the story of Amalek, where he was inside the cloud, spiritually speaking, he has to leave the daladamis of Torah and Tefillah. He now has to go outside of the cloud, as we said before. He has to go out to the place where there's this acher, where there's this person that's acting like a foreigner, and to try to get that he should now become a child in an open way. So this is, in a certain sense, it's a situation of Tamura. From the Mashpia's perspective, from Mashpia's point of view, he's exchanging his original place, and he's now going out to a Reshus Harabim. He's now also going to do a second Tamura, where he's going to make from this Acher, from this other person, that instead of being an Acher, he should become a Ben, he should become a child. And therefore, the claim and the argument could be, why should this person be leaving his own comfort zone, his own place of Kedusha, his Dalad Amis of Kedusha, to go into this Reshus Harabim, this public domain, this dangerous zone, so to speak, in order to search for this Acher to make him into a Ben? Wouldn't it be better if he remains in his own 4 cubits of Kedusha? Especially, he says, that going out there is connected with Nisyonis. It's a challenge. We say to Hashem every single morning, V'al Tiviyenu, don't bring us to any challenges. Especially, we shouldn't be putting ourselves into a challenging situation. So that's seemingly, in other words, negating the idea that there should be Tamura. And this is what the Torah says. You're right. When life is going normal and regular, Tamidim Kesidram, everything would be okay. That's not the regular way how things usually happen. However, when we see a situation where there is Yidden in the Midbar of the nations, as I said before, when we see Yidden that are in a situation of Sakanas, Nefashas, and danger, especially when we're speaking about not one Yid, but many Yidden, so this was demanded. We need to stop our learning Torah and Avodas, Atfilah, etc., and go out to fulfill this most greatest mitzvah, to save these Yidden that are in danger right now. The person is going to say that he doesn't want to go because he's afraid that he might be harmed spiritually. So the Torah says that's a chassid shaita. The Rebbe is referring over here to a Gemara, that if a person goes and sees someone drowning, and he's going to say, oh, I'm a man, and that's a woman, how can I go save her from drowning? Or the reverse. And so too with children that are drowning in the river. So that's going to be called a chassid shaita if you're not going to go and help them. So the Rebbe is applying this spiritually. That the Torah says this is a chassid shaita. Certainly when we're speaking about someone drowning spiritually, we know that Chazal tell us that someone getting somebody else to sin is worse than killing physically. So here's the same idea. If we see someone dying spiritually, it's even worse than someone dying physically. So surely we have to run and save him without any calculations. And if we don't do this, not only aren't you the opposite of a chassid, even of a chassid that's not a chacham, like the chacham, the Rebbe doesn't say over here the word chassid shaita again, the Rebbe says chassid sheini chacham, not only aren't you acting in a way of lefnim mishura sadin, aren't you acting beyond the letter of the law, but you're actually acting against the halacha. And the most serious one, pikuach nefesh, you have to go and save people. But then what happens? What does the Torah say? If you did have to get involved in this avodah of Tamura, so when you act according to this way, because of Torah, and according to the instructions of Torah, with obviously the prerequisite that on the one hand, although you are lowering yourself from your previous level, but not chas v'shalom rachmana litzlan in a way that you're going to degrade the Torah. You're not going to be making compromises in Torah. And surely not chas v'shalom rachmana litzlan to make changes in Torah and mitzvahs. But right now, temporarily, you need to take a step down. So the promise comes that Hamer Yimirenu v'hayahu usmurasa kodesh, which means that you're going to be involved in this avoid of this substituting, in other words, getting this person to be involved in Kedusha. So not only won't it harm you, but both usmurasa, yourself, and the other Yid that was originally an Acher, will both be Kodesh, and in a way of v'hayahu usmurasa kodesh. The Rebbe is about to explain what this idea of v'haya is. And the Rebbe says this itself is in the Rosh Tevis of the Havaya of Shem Havaya and Chodesh Shvat. Hamer Yimirenu v'hayahu. What does v'haya mean? In many places we find in the Gemara and Chazal, v'haya means that it remains as it was. In other words, we say v'hayahu. You're going to remain as you were. Certainly you won't have any Yerida. Not only you won't have any Yerida, but it will become even stronger. V'haya, you're going to remain as strong. And it's going to become greater and stronger. you're going to become stronger and greater in your kedusha itself. And not only yourself, so too in the recipient. We say v'hayahu regarding the other person, that on the one hand, v'hayahu, who could also refer to something that's, when we say who, it's referring to something that's not in front of you, something that's in third person, we'll say who, something that's hidden. So on the one hand, this person's Yiddishkeit was hidden till now, concealed. But nevertheless, it's always there, as the Rambam paskins. Every single Yid always wants to do the right things and do all the mitzvahs. He wants to be a Yid and do all the right mitzvahs. It's only concealed. It's the opposite of zeh, which is usually something you could point to, something that's revealed. So right now, it's like who? It's hidden. And yet the person that's mashpia is going to achieve that v'hayahu, that spark of Yiddishkeit that's inside of him concealed, should have the impact in a revealed way, in a way of v'haya, that it should be there fully with its full strength. The Rebbe says, from this tziruf of Shem Havaya of Shvat, we have another important, very crucial erah in the avodah of Yosef Hashem Li Ben Acher. There are some people that come with a complaint or with excuses and claims, etc. And they say as follows: when we are involved with a Yid, and you bring the Yid into the place, and into the place of Torah and mitzvahs, Dalad Amos Shal Torah and Tefillah. In other words, to use the analogy we said before, to bring him into the cloud. So we can understand at least then the benefit of it. You brought this Acher, and you made him into a Ben Laviv Sheba Shamayim. However, the claim goes, the argument goes, what's the benefit of putting on tefillin with a Yid? Or doing a different mitzvah? If it's only going to be one time. In other words, that person is going to, so to speak, go back to be outside the cloud. He's going to go back to his previous situation. He's not remaining in the Dalad Amos of Torah and Tefillah. Says the Rebbe, but the truth is the opposite. And we're speaking about the truth of Torah, the Torah paskins. And we know it says, Dvar Havaya Zu Halacha. Halacha is the Dvar Hashem. And also to use the Rambam's expression in Yad HaChazaka, that every person needs to view himself as if he himself is half meritorious and half chayiv. Chas v'shalom has half the opposite. And so too he has to view the whole world as 50-50 in the balance. And when you do one mitzvah, you tip the scale for yourself and the whole world for schus, and you brought for yourself and the whole world tshuva v'atzolah. In addition to this, we of course have, in addition to this clear psak din, there's also the point that when a Yid is makayim a mitzvah, mitzvah means tzav savachibur, he's connected to the Eibishter. It's connecting the Yid to the Eibishter, and he's connected now to the Eibishter in an eternal and everlasting way. In addition to all of this, we also have that because it's a mitzvah, it also has this special characteristic as a Mishnah paskins clearly, that mitzvah goyreris mitzvah, one mitzvah leads to another, brings another mitzvah, this mitzvah will bring in another mitzvah, which will bring another mitzvah, etc., until the person will become a shomer Torah and mitzvahs. But back to our pasuk. What is the next lesson we have from our pasuk? Now, even though in the meantime, with our physical eyes, we don't see how usmurasa yiyah, we don't see how the person is becoming completely holy. So here we have a clear answer and a hoirah from this tziruf of Shem Havaya, from this Rosh Tevis and the combination of Shem Havaya, which is very, very specific. Again, the Rosh Tevis of Havaya comes out from the four words, Homer Yimirenu, V'hoyahu. Now the next words, Usmurasa Yiyah Kodesh, that the substitute will become holy, that's actually not part of the Rosh Tevis. What's the message over here? You have to do your avodah. The Yid has to do his avodah. Homer Yimirenu V'hoyahu. You have to do the avodah in trying to get the person to change the way he was. And you have to try properly. And even though, again, as we said before, temporarily you're going down from your level and temporarily you're going out of your Dalad Amos of Kedusha, you have to go out there and try to get this other Yid that was an Acher, to try to get him the way he's supposed to be. But the result of it, whether the person will immediately become Usmurasa Yiyah Kodesh, you'll be able to see his holiness or not, Chas v'shalom, that's not a condition in your shlichus. Or to say it in a very clear way, says the Rebbe, the shlichus of the Yid is to do the action of going to help the other Yid. But to accomplish, to actually make sure that it all happens, that's the Eibishter's business, that's the Eibishter's part. Now obviously this doesn't mean Chas v'shalom to say that we could just suffice by doing one time an act with a Yid, whether learning Torah and Kiyum and mitzvahs, and then to abandon him chas v'shalom and say it's not my problem anymore. Of course, as long as we have any access to the Yid, we have to be kindling his Neir Hashem Nishmas Adam, the candle of Hashem, which is the neshama of the person. And as Chazal say in similar situations, afilu me'apon, we have to keep on doing it again and again, even 100 times, until until his flame will go up by itself. He should become a luminary. However, what we are saying is that even in a situation when you meet a Yid, and at that time it doesn't seem like you're going to have another opportunity to do with him anything else more than this one individual mitzvah. You don't know if you're going to see him again. Nevertheless, you have to do all of your ability right now. That's your shlichus. Homer yimirenu v'hoyohu. You have to do your shlichus of trying to get him to exchange his actions the way they are right now, coming closer to the Eibishter. The usmurasa yakodesh, practically how he'll become holy. So the Ezras Hashem, that will eventually happen, but you don't have to concern yourself right now with that aspect. Says the Rebbe, all of this is specifically relevant to our generation and to our time. The 10th of Shvat, Yud Shvat, is the day the Histalkos of Ilula, of who the Rebbe calls Nasi Doireinu, the Rebbe the Shver, the Rebbe my father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, which falls in a number of years close to Parshas Beshalach. The Yom Ilula of Tzaddik is the time that all of his actions, his Torah and Avodah that he worked throughout his life, is all being Oila, goes up above and shining in a revealed way from above down below. So we clearly see that this conduct of Yosef Hashem li ben acher, to make out of an acher a ben, this was the central theme and central nakuda of Mais of Torah and Avidasai of the Baal Hilula, of the Yosef of this generation. As in fact his first name is the Frierdiker Rebbe's first name, for which he was Moiser Nefesh B'Poyel Mamish throughout his whole life in this world. He sent Shluchim that had Mesiras Nefesh for this, and then those Shluchim had Shluchim which are all over in all sides of the world, in all corners of the world, and they are doing it, being matzliach, to be makarev yidin laviyim shabashamayim. And since they're doing this with the shlichus and the koyach of Nasi Doreinu, who has the name Yosef, so in addition to the fact that chas v'shalom there is no yerida, in no descent in their own level, on the contrary, nasa moicham v'libam zakim elef pamim kacha, their own minds and hearts become purified and elevated 1,000-fold. And this maila, that this idea that they are accomplishing by an acher, that they accomplish by the other people, the concept of mokim shabali tshuva oimdim, where it's about tshuva stands, it's how the gomer can't stand. So this that they are achieving by these other people is also, they're also themselves impacted by this. The shluchim themselves get this quality. And all of this also in a way of Yitzchak, which is the second name of the Baal Hilula, which is also from the meaning of schoik, of simcha, v'tuv leivav. And by Yivaracheyu Hashem, that each and every one of these Yidden get the special bracha of the Eibishter. And through this avodah, all Yidden go into and become part of Tzivus Hashem. The whole army of the Yidden is set up, with all of Klal Yisrael. Or B'nai Yisrael, Yoitzim B'yad Rama, Yidden go out with an outstretched arm, Bereish Glei, in an open way, B'vias Mashiach Tzidkenu, which Mashiach is the one that's going to come and bring that even Tzaddikim should do tshuva, B'ge'ula ha'amitis v'ashlema.